Okay, so I got my Cricut set up so that I could show you guys a little more here on this screen when you're off of the canvas and onto the cutting part of it. So up here it'll show that it's connected. So I have my Air 2 connected right now by the USB cord. You can also connect your Air 2 or your Maker with Bluetooth, just so you know if you haven't already figured that out or aren't aware. And then down here, it's where you set your material, what you're cutting on. So you can change the dial on your machine if it's something that you use a lot. So like regular vinyl, regular cardstock, you can just change the dial on the Cricut. Like I said in the previous video, there is this setting here for cardstock for intricate cuts. I would suggest using that if it's something like those mandalas that people have been posting, because that'll get the little tiny pieces in the middle. It'll sometimes go over something more than once. It'll cut more than once so that it makes sure it cuts through in the little tiny spaces. So you don't have to change anything if you set it to the right material for the right cut. So if it's not one of those everyday ones that's on the dial on the machine, you can click here where it says Browse All Materials. Now these two I use a lot, so I have them saved in my favorites. But normally, you know, when you're first starting out, there's nothing here, but you can add whatever you want to this section here. So if this were blank and I wanted cardstock for intricate cuts, I would go to Browse All Materials and click that. And then up here where it says Search All Materials, I'm just going to type in intricate and hit enter, and here it is, intricate cardstock for intricate cuts. This little star here, if it's hollow, that means you haven't chosen it as one of your favorites, but I do want it in my favorites because like I said, I use this one a lot. So if it's yellow, that means it'll show up on that previous screen like I showed you. So I'm going to click that, and then the little check mark on here means that it's the product that the material that you're working with, you've chosen that one. Here you don't have to really change the pressure unless it's something that you think needs a little more cut pressure to get through. So if you're using like really heavy cardstock, you might want to change this to more. I never ever change anything to less pressure because the machine automatically defaults for the material you're using. So I wouldn't change it to less really, but default is the normal one that Cricut has custom set in there for that particular material. Like I said, more would be if like you're using heavier cardstock for something like this. And then here in step 2, it tells you basically your steps. So you have these clamps in your machine. The A clamp is where you would put, say, your drawing markers, if you were going to use those. The clamp B is where your normal blade that comes pre-installed in the machine should already be there for you. So that's, this section here is just telling you what should be installed in the machine. And then here is telling you about loading and unloading the mat. I did go over that in the previous video. You don't have to wait till this stage to load your mat. I usually load my mat and then finish doing this just so that I don't have to worry about it, you know, falling on the floor. It's already there in the machine, ready to go. So once I have it loaded, I'm going to go ahead and pretend I loaded it into my Cricut. Okay, so then this will be ready when you have your mat loaded. Fast mode is basically if you're doing something really simple and you just want to get like a whole bunch of them cut at once. So for these flowers, you can actually use fast mode. They will usually cut fine. As long as your mat is not losing its stickiness. If you have an older mat, it tends to pull up the cardstock if you're going too fast. So I wouldn't choose fast mode if your blue mat's a little older. But if you have a new mat or you just cleaned it and it's ready to go, you can click fast mode here, and that'll just make your flowers cut super fast because they're not really intricate. I don't usually choose fast mode for like anything else, but for simple cardstock things I do. All right, so once that's ready, everything's loaded, you have your settings the way you want, you can go ahead and hit the little flashing C button on your machine, and that will go ahead and cut your project. And once the project is done, it'll say finished. You can unload your mat at that point. The little light for the arrow button will be blinking. That means it's okay to unload your mat. Then you can click finished, and then your project will be done.